we talked about, generative search and those types of things, but there's so much more than that as well, where it can make us more efficient in the work that we're doing. It can streamline tasks. It can help us come up with ideas faster for clients. It can help us communicate better with clients. There's just so many different ways that AI can be used, and we're really just scratching the surface right now.
Step into the world of success with your brand amplified, the ultimate podcast designed to unravel the intricacies of thriving businesses. I'm your host, Annika Jackson, and I'm on a mission to uncover the stories, strategies, and secrets that have propelled entrepreneurs and business leaders to success. I'm really excited to welcome John Horn to the show of Stub Group. You are a premier Google partner, and you've been working in this world for quite a while. So I'm excited for you to talk about the changes. I think they're coming even faster now when it comes to digital advertising in general, but particularly we have SEO, we have SEA. Now we have generative search. We see that if you go on Google, a lot of times an AI, algorithm will pop up a summary, or videos will come up first before you even get to the paid ads. It's very complex, and I think it's really hard for the average business owner who's not a digital media expert to understand how to get through all these intricacies. So I'd love to start at the beginning. What got you interested in digital advertising, and particularly Google?
Yes, so that is going to go back around, I think 11, 12 years ago, somewhere in that range. And I worked in different roles, both blue collar, white collar, different marketing stuff and whatnot. But at that point, I was approached by two guys I knew very well. One was my brother and a long-term friend of his. And they said, hey, we're starting an agency. We see this opportunity where lots of businesses are making this transition from traditional advertising over to digital advertising. They need help stewarding their budgets, figuring it out, running ROI positive campaigns. And so we're starting this agency called Stub Group. And they brought me in essentially along with them as employee number one. And we got to grow this thing from the ground up and figure out how to do it, how to run campaigns, how to get our own clients, how to bring on, more team members with great talent and experience, and ultimately grow the offerings that we have and our client base up to where we are today.
Amazing. Did you have a background in this? Did you go to school? I mean, I know there wasn't as
Not
much
really.
back in that time frame, but
yeah, not specifically. I've done some general, marketing, schooling, and education, but very much, Google world is all about just hands-on learning because, like you mentioned, earlier on in the conversation, things change so frequently that, if you read a book about it or you take a course about it, at school or something, by the time you're done with that, it's probably changed. It's probably no longer the way it was. And so, yeah, it was really just, getting in there, running campaigns, figuring things out, trial and error. And that's how we learned. And that's how we continue to learn as Google and all the other platforms keep changing things every day on us.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the world of Google, I'd love to hear more about the business. We started an agency, saw a market opportunity, of course, started the agency. Was it pretty easy to get clients to understand what your offerings were and why they needed to hire a firm instead of try to do it themselves? Did you get that first client pretty quickly? I'd love to hear a little bit about the business journey.
Yeah. So I think some of the earliest clients that we worked with were clients who kind of came to us from our network of, people we knew, things we'd done in other roles, other jobs, and, had good rapport, good reputation with them, and said, hey, let's, give us a chance to do this for you, that kind of thing. And then really where things started to take off in terms of us acquiring new clients was, I like to say, eating our own dog food, running our own Google Ads campaigns for ourselves, risking money to say, hey, I think we know what we're doing. Hopefully, let's see if we can actually prove this for ourselves and get our own client. And it worked. We started getting clients. Was it easy? No, it was not easy. And I think as pretty much nearly every entrepreneur in the early days of a business can attest to, there's so many things you got to figure out, so many things you don't know that you need to worry about until it happens, all sorts of fun things. But yeah, it was very much bootstrapped, very much a process of, we're going to figure out how to make this work. We're going to, hey, we got this client, they have this need. All right, well, we haven't done this before, but we're going to figure it out. We're going to put in the hours, the time, the blood, sweat, and tears to be a solution for this business and to accomplish what they want. Yeah. And to your question, do clients really understand it? It varies certainly, some clients are more savvy than others, but there's a lot of education back then and even still today that needs to be done of explaining, kind of setting expectations of what does it mean, if we're talking about Google Ads. What is Google Ads? What does that mean? What is possible? What is not possible? How does it work? How do you change and optimize over time? And so, yeah, lots of education that went into that, trying to explain these concepts to businesses.
Yeah. And the name, Stub Group, is there a story behind the name?
So I think probably half of our clients at some point or other call us Stub Hub. They make that connection, but it actually has nothing to do with tickets. The first part of the last name of one of our founders is Stub, and so it just became the Stub Group from there, and has been that way ever since.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. And is there a particular customer avatar that you prefer to work with and that you found is like your sweet spot in your business?
We work in terms of size primarily with small and medium-sized businesses. We work with a very wide variety of types of businesses. We like to say that we're industry agnostic in terms of who we work with. And part of that is because one specialty that we've developed over time is a high level of skill in what we call a Google compliance, but basically working within Google Ads policies and helping businesses who maybe had issues with them to comply with them, to fix problems, get their ads back running, things like that. And so because of that work, every type of business, unfortunately, sometimes has policy issues. Unintentionally, they'll flag something, they'll do something, they didn't realize they were breaking a policy or whatever. And so we've gotten to work with just a very wide variety of types of businesses, often because of initially helping them out with some of those policy issues they may have come across.
Yeah, I really appreciate that because the world is ever evolving. It's complex. Privacy, data laws are coming up all over the place. Every state has a different one. What's the national policy? What's the international policy in different countries? And then now we layer AI on top of that. So it would be hard for anybody to understand if they were not the subject matter expert like yourselves and in this work every single day.
Absolutely. And even there, a lot of people have problems because the policies that exist are very vague and how they are enforced are inconsistent. And there's, people like to talk about the black box, which is true of Google, of Meta, of most of the advertising platforms out there. And so sometimes it's not as simple as read the policies and do this and don't do that. It's more nuanced and more of an art of, okay, well, is something that might look suspicious to Google, even though they don't tell you it's a problem and there's no policy you're violating. So don't do it this way. Do it that way to make it more clear that you're legitimate. Stuff like that happens all the time.
Yeah. And over the past 12-ish years, the landscape obviously has changed a lot. Can you talk a little bit about that shift and the transition that you had to make? And then also, you obviously had to transition your clients and get them prepared.
Yeah, Google today looks very different than the Google of when we got started back over a decade ago. And I think it's important to keep in mind both what remains constant and what changes. So what remains constant is we try to think less about Google and think more about we are connecting our clients with customers. And right now, for the last decade and still right now, Google is one of the primary places to do that because Google has essentially a monopoly on search, which will probably get questioned by AI, and we can talk about that. But still at the moment, if you're going to look for a piece of information, you're going to go to Google, generally speaking. And so that's currently the tool that for many of our clients we use to connect them with customers. But then, of course, what has changed over time is, it used to be, hey, the 10 blue links and then some ads that would appear at the top on the right sidebar, back when there used to be ads on the right sidebar and all that good stuff. And then, of course, mobile is back then was not nearly what it is now in terms of how many people just do all their searching or start their searches from mobile. And so that behavior has changed. Like back in the day, it was like, oh, should we run separate campaigns for computers versus people on their mobile phones versus tablets, things like that. And over time, it's evolved to be like, look, people are, they're cross-device. They don't really care. It doesn't really matter. It's more audience-based. It's less where are they based in terms of what device they're using. So that's changed. And of course, what that search engine results page looks like has changed dramatically as well. You mentioned a lot of those changes already. You've got AI overviews now that come up at the top when people search and answer a lot of questions immediately. You've got YouTube videos that rank very, very highly in terms of where Google places them. You've got Google business profile things that come up if it's like a local search and you want to see what's going on the map. Google's plugging that in. And so all these different ways for potential customers to see your information and a lot of different places you have to optimize and do it in different ways. Optimizing for a high SEO ranking is completely different than running a good Google Ads campaign, which is different than getting a Google business profile to show up, which is different than YouTube and so forth. And so there's a lot of kind of fragmentation as well that goes into what the SERPs look like these days.
Wow. And are you helping assist clients with all of those areas?
We are. Historically, on the paid side of things has been a big part of our focus. And then we've more recently made a push into other areas as well, just seeing, hey, our clients need help with many scenarios. And again, we're in the business of connecting customers to their own customers and finding new customers. And so, yeah, we've expanded to helping with, SEO and Google business profiles and things like that.
Nice. Well, and you did mention AI, which I had also mentioned. So now we're hearing things like, you know, generative search is going to replace just basic SEO, SEA, SEM. Are you finding that that is going to be the case? Are you testing things out? And what does that look like?
So there's so much that is going on right now that's fascinating, and I feel like every day is a new day. So what I say right now may not be true a week from now because who knows what's going to launch. But a couple things I'm seeing. First of all, I would say, Google still has a very, very large market share of search. So as of today, ChatGPT, Perplexity, things like that, the very small players, but their growth rate is very, very high. And so if we continue to see that type of growth rate, they will quickly eat into the monopoly that Google has on search. So that's definitely an existential threat to Google that they obviously are taking very seriously and are trying to remedy by their own integration of AI into their search engine result pages, their own Gemini, etc. What I'm definitely seeing is, people changing the way that they search. We've all kind of learned how to search Google. It's more of keyword based. Most people don't type a sentence into Google. It's like, okay, what are the keywords I think are going to give me the results that I want to see? And then there's this mind shift now where we're going to something like ChatGPT or Gemini, etc., where it's this conversation. It's, okay, I'm going to actually explain what I'm trying to accomplish, why I'm looking for it. Let me give you context. And, oh, you tell me this. Great. Now let me give you more context or say, no, that's not quite the right thing. Try this. And it's such a very different experience, which is kind of fascinating to just retrain my own brain into. And I think what I'm really interested in seeing over time is how these tools like ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., how they monetize, because I think we're going to see ads coming to them. I think it's just a matter of time. And then B, how people kind of optimize for who wins showing up in those results. Because, there's still, if you ask it, what are the 5 best restaurants near me? There's still 5 people that win there. And, the other 100 in that area don't win. And so there's some logic and criteria for who's coming up when and why. And so just like SEO has been a massive thing for the past, however many years with Google, you're going to have this optimization for what the AI is pulling. And that's going to be a very, very important business model, for lack of a better word.
No, that's such a good point because I wasn't even thinking about how our chat models are being used for search, and maybe not widely yet, but we've also seen, obviously, YouTube is used for search. TikTok is used now, a lot of the social media platforms. So it almost seems like, while we see the example with Meta, right? They have ads, they have AI, they are trying to figure out how to capture consumer side and perhaps have their own chat functionality, and they'd have a little bit of that integrated into their systems. So that's one thing that we see, but we also see, because I know when I've looked at some stuff with Google, the way that you can do A/B testing, the way that you can let their algorithms decide, kind of, you put the parameters on price and campaign, you have to obviously input the creative, but then Google can do the work, which seems to me like it would take away from the work that you do and having that human element and expert behind it. So why is it still necessary to have an expert who can help you with your overall strategy versus just letting machines run everything?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So the tactics, the specific things that agencies and advertisers do, like you're mentioning, has changed a lot over time. We used to do a lot of what I would call button pushing, of a lot of manual decisions, like, okay, Traffic from mobile devices is converting 10% better than traffic from computers. Great. Let's put a 10% bid modifier and then reevaluate next week, stuff like that. And there are so many of those things that thankfully machine learning has taken over and can do, generally speaking, much better than humans, and can do it at scale. There's literally, I think, about 70 million signals that Google looks at that goes into each auction when you search something. And obviously, there's no way in which a human can even for one single option, look at that many signals and make a decision versus that happening, billions of times a day. So machine learning has improved a lot of things that used to be done manually. At the same time, there are very significant caps to kind of what that machine learning can do in that automation. First of all, it's only as good as the data is being input into it. And so, for example, if you're a business and you need to feed Google into feed a data into Google, say, hey, this is what's converting. These are the people that are filling out forms on my website, or purchasing products on my website, or placing phone calls after seeing the phone number on my website, things like that. You feed that information back into Google, and then Google can work with that to try and get more people like that and to understand what your cost per lead is and things like that. But that stuff goes awry all the time. Things break, you start sending the wrong data to Google, and Google just kind of is very good at exponentially doing whatever you're telling it to do. So if something breaks, something goes wrong, well, Google's happy to throw more money at what's going wrong and waste it, or vice versa. It kind of optimizes down to no traffic because it doesn't think anything's working. All sorts of things go wrong. So you've got to have humans watching for those things, thinking very strategically about what data to input into Google, and then constantly validating what the system is doing as well, because just weird things happen when the AI is doing it. And you'll have like, okay, this week things look great. And next week, wait a second, things are terrible. We didn't change anything. Why? What happened? We got to dig into it. We got to figure out what caused that. And so a lot of the things that agencies are doing now is strategy, is kind of validation, is thinking through what data are we inputting into Google, keeping it comprehensive, keeping it accurate, and working with clients, thinking through the big picture of what should they be advertising, how should they be messaging, is the creative good that we're giving the system to work with, things like that, which are still crucial to seeing success.
Yeah. So I love that you said, basically you're saying that it still has to be human assisted, because there are these different models, right? You can just let machines do their thing. You can have a lot of human input. You can have the machines kind of do their thing and then get human approvals. So I'm glad to hear that it's still very necessary to have that strategic thinking and creativity, and also just the oversight. Yeah. And when it comes to privacy, everybody is getting ready. It was delayed a little bit, but then we're looking at a cookieless world, at least a third-party cookieless world. No more tracking. And then Google kind of said, oh, just kidding. But my understanding is there is still some, we're leaning towards, or Google's leaning towards other systems where tracking is not going to be first and foremost. And so we still have to look at first-party data and other methods. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that. Explain it better than I'm explaining it, because you have insider information. And what are your thoughts, and what direction should people go when it comes to, how they're sourcing data, how they're tracking customers?
Yeah. So for those, listening or watching who maybe don't understand what a cookie is kind of foundational to the internet at this point in many ways. And it is something that follows you around and gives you an experience online. So if you go to, let's say you go to a website, and it can remember things about how you've engaged with the website, for example, can give you a better experience. It also can be used in advertising to follow you around and say, yeah, you looked at Nike shoes in this website. Great. I want to show you ads for Nike shoes when you go to this website, and things like that. And, a lot of people in the privacy space do not like cookies because they follow you around. They connect your information across different websites. They allow people to know kind of what you're doing and things which are really not privacy forward. And so, like you said, it's why Google has now many times basically said, we're going to get rid of cookies in Google Chrome, as an example. And then each time they've said it, they've had to kind of say, just kidding, or later, because they are so integral to just how the internet works, and they haven't really figured out a workable solution for replacing them at scale yet. And so we're in this kind of unique world where at some point they may go away, but we don't know when, we don't know how, we don't know what's going to replace it. And then you also have, some browsers who are more aggressive than others. So Safari, for example, is more aggressive at blocking trackers and making tracking harder than Google Chrome is, which makes sense because Google Chrome is Google and they're built around advertising, whereas, Apple is not built around advertising. They're built around kind of privacy being their marketing tool. And so where we're at right now is there's a lot of fragmentation and gaps in tracking online. There are some things you can know. There are some things you can track back. You can say, hey, someone clicked on this ad and then they went and took this action on this website. They placed this order. We know where it came from. Great. But then there are also, again, so many gaps where we don't know where this is coming from, how these ads or whatever is performing. And so it's very important, like you mentioned, first party data is very important. The more you can actually get customer information, email addresses, phone numbers, things like that, and both have direct communication with them through phone, text messaging, through email, etc., as well as just having that data to leverage in your advertising campaigns. That's really important. And then also looking at big picture metrics, not just looking at what does Google say my return on ad spend is, but looking at, hey, I'm making this much money as a brand. I'm spending this much money in marketing. And how is that changing over time? If I spend more money in marketing, am I actually seeing my bottom line improve or am I just seeing my efficiency decrease? And Google's like, oh, you have a great ROAS, but I'm making less profit because that efficiency decreased. And so you've got to be looking at those types of things as well, monitoring them very closely, along with what the platform tell you about tracking to really try to understand what's working or not working for your business.
Yeah. Well, when we think about the fact that you are a Google expert and partner and, thinking about the different systems we use with OpenAI, with Claude, et cetera, going to eventually have advertising because people are starting to maybe just, not that high of a percentage, but a few people are starting to use it for search. So is that going to change your business? Have you been talking internally about how to prepare for that?
It will and it won't. It will change, obviously, the tactics of what platforms are we using, but it won't change the ultimate mission and goal of what we do, which is, again, connecting customers to their customers, finding new customers. And in many ways, it's exciting that there's going to be more competition to Google. I'm not going to diss Google. I'm grateful for Google and a lot of things that they've done, but competition's a good thing. It pushes everyone to do better and it gives people options. And so it's exciting to think about a world where we can, lean into those options and we can find competitive advantages because we could say, hey, ChatGPT is working really well for this business for whatever reason, this particular industry. Great. Let's dominate it. Let's do things here that maybe the competition hasn't figured out yet. And it provides those really exciting opportunities for kind of arbitrage, for getting in early and getting really good results for a client and, getting that first mover advantage in a channel, things like that. So a lot of opportunity ahead.
Yeah. I'm also glad to hear that because I think people get scared. I love AI and lean into it, but I know a lot of people who get they don't know the terms between what's Gen AI, what's machine learning, how do they all work together? Is it going to take people's jobs or are our jobs just going to evolve? So I really appreciate you sharing. It's going to change some of the strategies and tactics. But at the core, people need to reach their ideal customers, and that's never going to change. And you still have to figure out how to connect them, and you're just going to strategize and figure out those best ways. Speaking of best methods, we know that video search, voice search are things that are also really being utilized or starting to be utilized more. Are those also techniques that you use beyond what we think of as a normal, display ad or search ad?
Those are definitely a part of the user journey. Voice search is an interesting one because I think for a long time, people thought that there would be very unique optimization for how you might optimize content to try and kind of capitalize on voice search. And it never really came to fruition. So like voice search is a thing, but you don't optimize pages really differently because people, speak into their phone versus how they search online. And a lot of that has to do also with, I think, just the platforms like Google being, again, really good at understanding user intent. So whether or not you're speaking a longer phrase into your phone, typing a few keywords, Google's still figuring out what you're looking for and then finding the information that's relevant to that. On the video side of things, that definitely is a big area where, YouTube, as Google loves to say, YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world after Google.com itself. And it's an incredible resource. There's so much information. It's the first place that many people go for information. It also, as we mentioned earlier, ranks very highly in regular Google search results. So a lot of people might search something on Google.com and see a YouTube result as an option. And so, yes, SEO for videos is very important. And I would say also is probably still one of the less competitive areas, at least as compared to regular Google search results. Quote unquote, regular Google search results, the 10 blue links, highly competitive, highly built out. How do you do SEO for that? There are less businesses, less companies thinking about creating video content and getting that to rank. And so I've seen a lot of businesses who are never going to rank high on the 10 blue links really be able to capture very valuable video real estate by creating great content with, good descriptions, good video titles, stuff that's engaging, and Google rewards them for that. So a lot of opportunity there, I think, for companies trying to get an edge.
Nice. You've worked with over 2,000 clients. So I imagine that you have one or two, stories of cases where there was a particularly difficult or challenging campaign. Maybe it was controversial or whatever the case may be. So I'd love to hear if there's one that you can share with us. And then a really great success story beyond that, where somebody came and they didn't really know what they were doing maybe. And, they didn't know what to expect. And you just blew them out of the water with the connections you made.
Yes, trying to think through all of the options that come to mind. Yes, it's been so many challenges. The first challenges that come to mind are definitely in the area of the Google compliance and suspensions, like we talked about. We've had so many businesses who've come to us and said, we don't know what went wrong, but we can't advertise on Google anymore. And this is literally going to destroy our business if we can't figure this out. One comes to mind. We had a client who they're based in, I think, California. They were in, I think, kind of the industrial design industry, something like that, if I remember correctly. And they were in a situation where the majority of their business, the majority of their leads came from the Google advertising. And for whatever reason, Google suspended their account and they weren't getting any leads. And they came to us and said, basically, there was a timeline like, hey, if we can't get this solved, in I think it was a month or so, we're going to lay off a large percentage of our team because we just don't have the business coming in. And obviously, it's a lot of pressure to work under, as you can imagine, but we made it work. We figured out what the problem was. It wasn't anything, they weren't maliciously or intentionally violating Google's policies, but there were some things that Google had flagged that we were able to fix. And we were able to get their ads back online and then also work with them after that to actually manage their ads and make their advertising more effective than it was before they came to us. And that type of thing is just so, so rewarding to just see tangibly we saved jobs by what we were able to do. And the client obviously very, very grateful for that work. And so that's one that comes to mind as a really fun example.
Yeah, that is a really good example. And one thing that you are doing also is that you give back. You want other people to understand how to use these resources, right? You have online courses, videos on your YouTube. What compelled you to offer that? Because I know some people offer, free content. Some people paywall it. I love the fact that you offer it for free. I think that's important.
Yeah, I'll be very transparent. So I love informing people, but also I understand that when you inform people and they see that we know what we're doing, they often aren't going to go and do the work themselves. They say, okay, you know what you're doing. I don't have the time. I don't want to figure this out. I'm going to go hire Stub Group to do it. And so it's very valuable information from my perspective. It's stuff that people absolutely can take and do DIY if they want. But I also know a lot of people aren't going to do that. And they're going to, again, see this as a testament to the knowledge that we have, the experience we have, and come partner with us and pay us to make them more successful online. So that's certainly kind of the long-term strategy and what we put out.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's okay. That part is okay because most people won't want to enact it themselves, or they will think that they're going to, and then they'll look a few months down the road and go, I haven't done anything. That's just why my business isn't growing.
Absolutely. And often too, we are, I would say, helping people get to the place in their business where it makes sense for them to partner with someone like Stub Group. So a lot of businesses just starting out, they really shouldn't be hiring an agency yet. They don't have the money. They've got to bootstrap and figure things out. And hopefully they can leverage some of the free information we provide to be successful, to avoid some of those pitfalls that could take them down, and then grow their business to that place where they can justify bringing on a really expert partner like Stub Group to help them take things to the next level. So it's a long-term strategy, but hopefully investing into businesses who we can then, partner with and work together in the years to come.
Yeah, fantastic. What advice would you give to marketers who want to start their careers learning Google, really diving into the world of Google advertising?
You got to get your hands dirty. So, this is a world, we talked about how quickly it moves. Yes, courses, if they're relatively recent, they can be helpful, give you some foundational information, etc. I'm not gonna talk down on them in any way. But at the end of the day, you've got to actually work in the industry and see what works, get that feel, get that experience. And so my recommendation is find friends who are willing to let you, learn on their campaigns for free. Obviously don't tank their business, but somebody who's going to be willing for you to trade your time to manage some of their ad spend to try and make them good results, or finding an agency that's got a training program. I would say don't expect to make a lot of money initially. Look at it as gaining experience, gaining knowledge, and then there's obviously money to be made after that. But you just gotta get in and get that experience as fast as you can.
Fantastic. And are there any other digital trends, emerging technologies that you think are really exciting and that you're looking at as a team to figure out how you can serve clients even better, how you can use it for your own advertising and sales cycle?
Yeah, well, again, going back to the AI buzzword, I mean, that's very much the big thing right now in terms of how many applications it has. So we talked about, generative search and those types of things, but there's so much more than that as well, where it can make us more efficient in the work that we're doing. It can streamline tasks. It can help us come up with ideas faster for clients. It can help us communicate better with clients. There's just so many different ways that AI can be used, and we're really just scratching the surface right now. And we're investing a lot of time and energy and resources into figuring out how can we best use these resources to do a better job for our clients and to streamline the work that we're doing and get more done with less. And so that's a very, very exciting world to be in right now.
Nice. Lifelong learning.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, John, we're going to obviously lead people to your website. I know that you also have a free offer.
Yes. So on our website, stubgroup.com/free, we've got a number of free resources about running Google Ads, doing it more effectively, not getting suspended, things like that. And then we also are happy to talk with anybody. We have a free consultation, talk about what you're doing or what you want to do, give you some ideas about advertising, and also see if maybe we're a good fit to help you.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you have, lastly, a favorite quote, mantra, family motto? Words that just keep you going every day, whether it's in your business, with your family, or a little bit of both?
Yeah, something I don't know if I've ever said this in the podcast before, but kind of early in my life, I was kind of in that stage of what's my motto going to be for life, and I came up with this kind of Latin phrase, which I've honestly forgotten how to pronounce it correctly, but the translation is "guard from harm," and it was just this idea of I want to help people. I want to, put good into the world, obviously, and I want to do that in a way that is constructive. And whether that be the employees I'm working with, whether that be the clients that we're responsible for, I want to help. I want to make bad things go away, which is probably part of how we got into this kind of Google suspension world to begin with. Yeah. So, guard from harm.
Awesome. I don't think anyone's used that on the podcast, but definitely something that's top of mind in the world we're living in. So thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing some of your knowledge and some things for us to be thinking about as we look into the now and the future of Google advertising and just advertising in general.
Thank you so much for having me on. Really enjoyed the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you to everybody who is watching this episode or listening to it. Reach out to John for more advice. Take advantage of the free resources that he's offering. Schedule a call. And don't forget to drop us a rating and a review. It really helps us get out to more people. With that, I'll be back with another amazing guest to share their story and their journey very soon. Thanks for listening or watching to this episode of Your Brand Amplified. Don't forget to leave us a rating or review on your favorite podcast listening platform. And if you want to learn more, check us out at yourbrandamplified.com.